What happens when someone from the franchising world comes in and builds a roofing company based on proven systems? Will you end up with something as special as today's guest has built? If you've ever thought to yourself, man, I want to build an amazing company. It's not just about the money. I want to have a great culture. I want to have rock star people. I want to provide for people and their families and support our community. And I want to leave a legacy. Then this episode is for you. I am pumped to share with you my interview with Roofing 101 CEO and owner, Graham Desert. So Graham, what do you look for? What does your team look for? Your recruiting manager look for when you're bringing on new team members?
So some of the things that we look for, number one, they need to be goal oriented. So we'll ask a lot of questions around like their goal orientation. You know, what kind of goals do they set? What's a goal that you set for yourself before in the past that you missed or hit? You know, why? Walk me through that. So goal attainment is big. Tenacity is big. So we'll ask questions around what kind of difficult things have you done in the past? What have you stuck through? What have you quit? Fundamental ability, you know, someone's ability to handle challenges and stress. Instrumental ability, you know, can you speak on your feet? Can you read? Can you do math? Like all of those things make a huge difference. And then I would say another one would be leadership. You know, we're looking for leaders, so we want to know what kind of leadership experience do you have in the past? What kind of results have you achieved with and through other people?
Sounds like they're applying to the CIA or the military or something. Do you have a military background?
I don't. Yeah. I grew up in the franchising industry actually. And that's where, you know, some of my partners and some of the people that actually work here, you know, they either own franchises or were part of a franchise organization, and it's just it's a system of it's a system and a way of doing business. And so when you're recruiting, it's super important to have that same system. So you got to systematize things. So if you're looking for specific traits and certain things within people, you then have to identify and then come up with questions that you can probe into and get those answers, you know, and then you make a judgment call, like on a scale out of 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10, you know, how well do they score in that area according to the interview. And then you score their application process, you score their resume. I mean, our process is pretty extensive. It takes about 3 weeks to get through our interview process.
So we've been doing this for almost 8 years, working with hundreds of roofing companies. Like that's probably the most thoughtful process that I've ever heard. I would say most companies are like posting on Facebook, like, yo, need sales reps. Like you can start Monday, just show up. Like, and you're a warm body, we'll throw you in the system. And that's why there's like this huge problem in the industry with like a ton of turnover and just chaos. So that came from the franchising world. That makes a ton of sense. And did I hear in one of your videos you have a recruiting manager, Jason, was it?
Yeah. So Jason Thompson is our director of recruiting. And then we have, I think it's like 3 or 4 other full-time recruiters. That's all they do is recruit.
Wow. Okay. So sounds like you're recruiting a lot of people. Can you tell us a little bit about the company and how you're set up? Like you're based in California and you've got several offices, locations throughout the country, right?
Yep. So what I'll do is I'll give a brief history of how, you know, I started in the industry.
Yeah, please do.
So I started my first business when I was 20, and I was a painter by trade. You know, I worked on a ladder, painted houses in summers, you know, during high school and college to make money for school and whatnot. Got to a point where I learned the trade, and you know, I figured, man, if I can do this by myself, you know, I wonder what it's like to be my own boss. So I quit my job, started my own painting business. And then that was at 20. And after the first year, I was able to, you know, provide for myself and my family, you know, at that time. And so the thought then, it was like this constant thought of like, man, if I could do this by myself, I wonder what it takes to, you know, hire 8 people or 10 people. What can I do with the team? But I was a history major, you know, in college. I had didn't know how to run a business, didn't know marketing, didn't know production, didn't know sales, didn't know anything about finances. I just knew how to balance a checkbook. For those of you who know about balancing checkbooks back in the day, that's what I knew. And so I got involved with a college franchise system called College Pro Painters. I when interviewed for a local franchise position, I got it. Ended up being the top franchise after 2 years at the age of 23. Went from a couple employees to 32.
Wow.
So yeah. And really what that was they had a system and a way of doing things. And my personality is, okay, well, I just have this curious personality. I wonder if this is possible. Because this is possible, I wonder what we can do now. And so it was just this constant growth. So I got to that point of, it was the top franchise in the country. It was like, okay, so what next? So I left being a franchise owner and a business owner. I went to work with them corporately, because corporately, when you work with a franchise organization, you're learning higher level skills. I was like, all right, so if I could do this with 30 people, I wonder what it takes to run a business with like a couple hundred. And so that's what I did at age 26 when I had a corporate division, and I started with like 6 employees and grew it to like 150 in like 6 months. And so a lot of that is having a recruiting system, having a training system, and a leading system. So it's putting all that together. So I learned that at a very young age. And then after that experience, I was there for a few years. I enjoyed it and I learned a ton. I met a lot of people across the country. And that was really like my goal in my 20s, was to meet as many people as I can, learn as much as I possibly could. And knowing that someday I'll break off and start my own company. So I left that role and started to work with a local roofing contractor in Kansas City, and worked there for a few years as a roofing sales rep to really learn the ins and outs of roofing.
Hold on, back up here. I got to interrupt. So you were at this national level, at the franchise level here in the corporate offices. You left that to go be a salesman for a roofing company. What was the point there? Why'd you make that transition?
It was really influenced by my older brother. My older brother, I look up to him. He's a really smart, wise individual, and he was working there and was like, hey, this is a really great company. I think you could learn a lot working here. You can make some good money. And quite honestly, I was tired of traveling at that point. I was married. I think at that time I had 3 kids, or I have 5 now, but
it's all a blur.
Yeah, we had 2, and maybe she was pregnant or something like that. And I was like, man, I need to get off the road. So it was a local company that didn't travel. So, I'd be home every night. So that was attractive to me. Learned a new trade and a new skill. And then we broke off from there and started my company.
Okay. So you were selling roofs for the company in Kansas City.
Correct.
That's where you're from?
Yeah. Originally I'm from the Midwest. My dad was in the military, and that was his last station was Kansas City.
Okay, gotcha. So that's a very common thing that we see in the industry. Obviously, it's roofing salesperson like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to break off and start my own business. Like, happens every single day. Not necessarily a bad thing. What was it that you saw, assuming you're making decent money, selling roofs and all that, like you knew you had the systems, you knew you had that background to go build that blueprint in the roofing world?
Correct. Yeah. And I knew once I got my first taste of entrepreneurship at age 20, I was like, no turning back, dude. Like this is what I'm doing with my life. I love being in charge of my own destiny. I love like responsibility. I love leading people. That just put it on my shoulders. I'll take care of it. That's my mentality. And so I knew it was going to happen. The timing of it, I wasn't quite sure. And I just knew like, hey, get out and meet people, learn systems, learn as much as possible. And then one day your opportunity is going to come. And so I remember I started my business and it was just me, and I started, knocking doors. That's how I started. it was like that for, I don't know, let's see, till 2014. So it was probably like 4 or 5 years, out running my own gig, being sales, doing the operations, all of that stuff.
Order materials and managing jobs and.
Yep, I did all that, and was doing pretty well. Was really comfortable, making a great living, living in the Midwest, super, super comfortable. Got to a point where I'm like, okay, there's got to be something more. I've matured as a business owner, and the money that comes along with it. Now there's something more. So I started to hire sales reps and employees. We grew. We did like $5-6 million a year for a number of years, and it was just comfortable. I got to a point. I remember my wife and I were like, she was out here in San Diego on a retreat, and we were talking on the phone, and she was just super happy. I could hear the joy in her voice, and so I was like, man, why don't we just move? Let's just move. And she's like, you serious? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we made the decision to move with zero plans. We didn't have any plans. We just decided like, that's the move we wanted to make. I knew ultimately I wanted to expand the company. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work. But I know that like, if you think too much about it, you end up thinking yourself out of it. So we made a decision to move, and then started telling people, like I told my mother-in-law, told my parents, then told the company, told the employees, and they're like, what, what are we going to do? I'm like, I don't know yet, but we got 9 months to figure it out. That's plenty of time.
Yeah. You didn't want anyone talking you out of it, right? Like you had your dream, you had your decision, and you wanted that to be yours.
Exactly. Yeah. So we got everything prepared. I hired a management team in KC, left Kansas City in 2017. And at that point, I knew that we would have to change the name of the company because it used to be Desert Companies, which okay. we just had a discussion about my last name, and it's super confusing. Well, I get inquiries, emails and phone calls asking if we do wedding cakes and stuff like that. I'm like, no, dude, we do roofing. What, why are you calling me that?
I just saw dessert and I just blacked out, and that's why I just had tunnel vision.
Yeah. So when I moved out here, I knew, and I applied for the California license. I knew we were going to have to change the name of the company because it wouldn't stick outside of KC. So, I came up with Roofing 101, started working with a brand coach. Once I got the license, I then was like, all right, I need a coach. I need someone to hold me accountable. Yeah, it's something I can do myself, but I would like to have a coach to help me. And so I went back to my roots, the franchising space. And I knew of Takuya, who's now our CEO. I knew of Takuya, and we met probably 2005, 2006. And he ran the whole East Coast for this company, and also ran the recruiting department and a bunch of other roles. So he was running a consulting firm at the time. I called T and was like, hey, I need a coach. Will you coach me? Just hold me accountable. And he's like, yep. So he worked with me for, I think, like 2 months in the summer of 2018. And after a couple months, I was like, you know what, let's just partner together and build a massive company. And so that's essentially what we did the fall of 2018. And really my thinking with that was I just knew that there was like only so far I could take the company, and by myself. Like, I'm a smart guy and I have a lot of talents and skills, but there's only so far that I can go by myself. And so I saw T as someone who is super developed, super refined, shares the same vision, shares the same values. Values are super important, to be aligned there. That was the opportunity.
Wow. Quite a journey.
Yeah, quite a bit.
It's interesting you mentioned that about T. So I have a business partner, Tim Conley, and he was my business coach for maybe a year and a half. This was like 5 years into Contractor Dynamics, and he was my coach. And we had a good relationship, and we saw some opportunities. We were talking about some things for growing and expanding and scaling. And he's like, you know what? Like, he came to me. He's like, you know what? Let's do this together. And I was like, we went back and forth for a few months. It's a big decision, right? You build something, you're bringing someone else in. But that was my my line of thinking as well. I'm like, I could build this pie, I could bake this pie, it could be this big. But with Tim, we could probably, make something like this big because he's got the experience, someone to hold you accountable. Also someone to share that journey with, because being an entrepreneur, an owner, a leader can be lonely if it's just, if it's just you going through those ups and downs. So I totally get that. So you're starting, so you had this blueprint in KC, you had the company going, you kept it going, right?
Yep.
And then you started from not scratch because you had your knowledge, but as far as brand recognition and all that, you're starting from scratch with a new name in San Diego. And what you said about hiring a brand coach, I saw that in one of your videos. I was like, wow, that's amazing, because we're doing something in the roofing industry that we're trying to convince roofers that they need to, focus on brand building and not just like knocking doors and hunting down leads and everything like that. So I was like, oh, you mentioned that, the brand word. So what was going through your mind there? Like, what was the decision-making process for wanting to hire a brand coach?
Well, because I got like us, like businesses, think about business in general. Like, we're really good at the transaction, like you figure out how to generate a lead, you figure out how to create a sale, then you produce it and you collect money, and that whole cycle. Like, great, we figured that out. And, that's step one in business, is figuring out that whole operational cycle, And so I figured that out at a very young age. And then I've also figured out that there's much more to a business than just the transaction. There's a relationship piece, and the relationship piece, not just with your customer, but there's a relationship with the people that work for you. There is a relationship with your suppliers. There is a relationship with your strategic partners. All of that, like that is what brand is about. Brand encompasses the transaction process and all the relationships together. And so it's really understanding the journey that a customer goes through from the time you knock on their door or you pick up the phone to answer their call, all the way till you collect the check. That's just one clip of the journey. Where it really, really starts is when the final check. One thing that really irked me was my time being a sales rep. One of the questions you would ask was, well, who roofed your house last time? And nobody would freaking know.
No one knows. Yep.
No one knows that answer. Very rarely would they be like, oh yeah, so-and-so. And so my thought was, you know what? I'm going to vow that I will not be a forgettable roofing company. And so one, it starts with the name and the brand and everything within that. And so it's not just the transaction. You have to think about the foundation of the organization. And the foundation is really your belief structure, and I was talking a little bit about that yesterday in one of my videos. The first thing that this brand coach did was walk me through, what do you guys actually believe in? What's your beliefs? Not just values, not your vision, but it's deeper than that. What do you fundamentally believe in as a man? Because that influences how you do business, and get it on paper. So that was the first step, is really to get the belief structure in place, and then understand what's the vision, where are we going? What do we want to accomplish? And, I had an idea, and Takuya and I, went on a retreat and really spelled all that out. That's all we accomplished on the retreat was what do we want to do? And what's the foundation of the organization? And we built that. And then after that, it was of course, we were aligned on hiring a bunch of people and opening up lots of markets and stuff like that. And ultimately, I want you guys to understand that this isn't about, building a massive company for money. This is about building a company to provide opportunity for people that need it. This is about servicing communities, and I feel like we have an opportunity to do that. So we're doing it.
That was kind of obvious to me when you're talking about your journey through your 20s, going from college pro painters and moving around, and it didn't seem like you're chasing the dollar at all. You were very intentional about building your skill set, developing personally and professionally, and with a focus on serving people. And I'm sure, and I can see it from here across the country through your videos and your company and everything like that, that's very transparent. So you guys have done an excellent job at that. So this retreat, it was you and T. It was just you two guys.
Just us.
Just kind of.
It was like a leadership. It was a leadership retreat, but we were there together, and
Cool.
yeah. So that was like the whole week was just focused on building the foundation of the company.
And so from that vision and the mission and the core values, you have what you call vision meetings, right?
Correct. Yeah. So every month we have a new class of hires coming in. So it's the first week of every month. So first week of every month we start a class. It's a 2-week process. It's pretty spelled out. And what I do is, I introduce the company, tell the company story, how it started. And then, I give a snippet of, the vision, mission, values, the priorities, how we make decisions. So people understand when they see decisions made, they know exactly like what we're thinking. Because a lot of times, like people that work at organizations just don't get it. They don't understand why leaders make decisions. So if you can communicate what the priorities are, then they start to understand. And that was, some of the things that I learned, throughout being a business owner. Some of my failures, in leadership was not communicating that. And it's like, I had a branch open in Denver and it failed. I ended up demoting the manager. And, at that point, it was like, I think there was like 8, 9, or 10 people that were under him. And once I demoted the manager, he left and started his own company, and he's doing really well. And then everybody else started leaving, trickling out. And that was an eye opener for me. Like, there's got to be more, to a business than just, the person that they're following, so we have to create more, So does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I love that. And I don't know if I've heard it articulated like that, like communicating to your team how decisions are made by you as an owner and management team. But I think that also helps your team make their own decisions while they're faced with situations, if it's with a client or a particular job or just something else that's going on, they can use that framework and those core values to make the right decisions, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly. And so that's super important. And we want people to represent our brand and understand exactly what it is. And sometimes people don't align with it. And they may not align with it in the interview process. And that's okay. They'll either pull themselves out or we won't move them on to the next step. Or they won't align with it in training and they'll quit after a couple of days. And that's okay too. I mean, we don't have this crazy turnover rate, but we also don't have a super high retention rate.
Gotcha. So where are you guys at now? You're in San Diego. You've got several branches, right?
We do, yeah. And so you guys understand, we our philosophy was first of all, we won't go somewhere unless we have proper leadership. So that's number one. So if we have leadership, we'll cast the net wide. Okay, so it looks like we casted our net wide because we did. We found a lot of qualified leaders. So we've got qualified leaders in these markets, and then now it's time to go dig deep in these markets. So the areas where we're working in San Diego, LA, Phoenix, Tucson, Seattle, Portland, Spokane. Austin, Texas, Kansas City, Minneapolis. And those are really like the main areas where our operations are going. We're registering in, I believe we are registered in every state west of the Mississippi.
Wow.
And we're getting licenses and I think some of we just got our Wisconsin license the other day. We're working on Illinois, the Dakotas. So every week I have an executive meeting and we go through, our licensing and registrations and where we're at. And so I know Illinois and the Dakotas are on the docket.
Wow. That's quite a big footprint in a relatively short amount of time. So where do you find those leaders in those different markets? How do you build that network?
A lot of it's through networking. So people that we know.
Okay.
And that's where the leadership comes from. So we, companies we used to work for, the company that I used to work for was Nationwide. There's Nationwide and then also in Canada. And so, the franchising space is pretty I mean, it's a big space to dip into. So that's where we found a lot of our, our general managers, our directors, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, and those people like yourself are more kind of indoctrinated into the systems of the business instead of like winging it and transactions. It's like we need a system for this and a system for that, and that's how we operate, right?
Yeah, so we've got the system together and we're all speaking the same language,
That helps.
And the other thing is that these guys and gals were working at the same companies, doing the same positions that I was doing and T was doing. And so, again, we're speaking the same language.
That is really cool. Really cool. So you've got this big footprint. You've got these leaders all over the country. You've got licensing going on, registrations. Do you mind sharing what is the vision for Roofing 101?
Yeah. So the vision that we communicate internally is to create the best experience, period. And I know that's not like, that's not revenue driven or anything like that. So we'll get to that, but creating the best experience, period, that's our vision. And doing that across the nation that's our goal. That's what we're moving towards. So we want to be operating in, is it 49 states? We're not going to go to Alaska.
Is there a market there?
I'm sure there is. Yeah,
okay.
There's roofing not nationwide, worldwide.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's unique logistics there. So it seems like let me be show people a little behind the scenes here. I reached out to you on Facebook, sent you this podcast interview idea, sent you a link, you scheduled it, showed up on time. You've got, you said you have your afternoon kind of set aside for this. Contrary to most roofing company owners that I know, you seem to be pretty cool, calm, and collected. You've got your business structured. You've got your day structured. Can you tell us about that? Like how that happened? Because most of the roofing company owners that I know are like working 16 hours a day. They don't show up for calls. They're just like wearing a million hats. And hey, I'm definitely guilty of that at some points too. So what is it that gives you that structure?
It's my team around me, 100%. Like I've been in that position before. Since I started till about, I would say recently. I mean, towards the end of 2019, and I was involved in operations. And at some point, you have to make a decision. You're either going to continue to do operations, or you're going to step out of operations and delegate that onto another leader. And so, fortunately, I was able to do that. And that was my goal. My goal was, okay, at what point, I need to step out of operations, I am the bottleneck of the business. So I need to step out and allow these guys to step in and run it. That's probably the biggest struggle that I've had is, and I still struggle with it today, is, allowing them to make decisions and allowing them to do what they do best and not get in the way. Not that what I contribute wouldn't be valuable, but at the same time, my focus and my time is better spent doing future-oriented stuff, working on the business as opposed to in. So, what's the guy's name? Michael Gerber wrote a book, and it was one of the first books that I wrote, or not wrote, but read.
E-Myth Revisited.
E-Myth, and my brother gave it to me when I was 22 years old, when I was, running my business, and it was like, you can be the mechanic, the manager, or the entrepreneur. And so first I started out, you remember my journey, I started out as a painter, I was the mechanic. Well, then once I started to become like an entrepreneur, a business owner, I was actually a manager. I was in that manager role. I'm in operations, I'm making decisions, I'm working with customers, stuff like that. And my goal is to always to get into the entrepreneurial seat, which is where I am now. And so now my role as the chief visionary officer is, roofing is just one snippet of the business. We're going to get into leadership development. We're going to get into other trades, things like that. We'll get into other businesses that will actually ultimately, if it aligns with our values and if it aligns with our vision, creating the best experience, then we'll do it. And if it can be monetized, that's ultimately what my job is to create future opportunity.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. E-Myth. I was already thinking about that when you started talking about those distinctions. That was the first business book I ever read. must have been, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that the one of the examples that he uses in the book is a plumber. It's like, guy's a great plumber. He's like, oh, I'm Friday afternoon, I'm just sick of this. I'm gonna start my own plumbing business on Monday, and it's like going from mechanic to manager and kind of escalating from there. So yeah, fantastic book there. So I was looking at one of your posts on Facebook, doing some Facebook stalking before the interview and everything like that. And I saw your post about the rim to rim to rim in Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone commented on there like, man, how do you have the time and resources to do stuff like this? And you're like, oh, well, my supportive wife, and before and after work and on the weekends and everything, you make it happen. So it seems like you're very aware of what you want and where you want to go with your business, and also very intentional about making time for those different things and not just waking up and being a firefighter every day. Yeah.
And intentionality is really important to me. And so is doing things with meaning, like I'm not just going to do something to do something. At the same time, I mean, yes, my wife is very supportive. My family is very supportive. There was a time where, man, I would say probably like the first 10 years of our marriage where like I got into alcohol a little too heavy. Things weren't going well in my life, in my marriage at that point. And things were well business-wise, but personally it was a train wreck. And so I know a lot of people can actually identify with that. And so what I did was I made a decision to get my shit together, And so part of that was making a commitment to take care of my body. I don't know. I mean, I get that a lot, and people will ask like, well, how do you do it? I mean, it seems like you have 5 kids, you have a business and all that. And, the bottom line is you just got to do it. You have to prioritize it and make it part of your schedule. And, you're going to have to cut out certain things, like I don't party, I don't binge watch, TV or Netflix or whatever. So I go to bed at a decent time. I wake up, I do training in the morning, or like that's what I did when I was operating. So when I say operating, that's like when I'm in operations, I've had no choice but to wake up early and get it done early, because a lot of times in operations, you got phone calls going till a little bit later at night. And sometimes I just got good at working out and being on the phone at the same time. Like literally I'm on a 5-mile run or a 10-mile run, and I'm fielding phone calls as I'm running. You can get good at priority management, and priority management comes down to making decisions, and then also learning how to leverage things and, decide if it's not important, you cut it out of your schedule. And you just get flexible with things that can be flexible, and things that have deadlines, and you just make it happen. So I just got really good at that. And I got good at understanding like how I used to make excuses and the stories I'd tell myself, and just said enough's enough, And at some point, you got to look yourself in the mirror and decide, what you want to do and who you want to be and how you want to be regarded and what legacy you want to leave.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more. And like I told you before we started recording here, that's one of the primary reasons I wanted to reach out. Because it's like this guy's like he's squared away. Like they say in the military, like this guy's squared away. And I subscribe to a lot of the same beliefs. I'm a big believer in putting everything in a calendar, working out every day, and as much as possible trying to build my business around my life instead of building my life around my business, because we all know that there's never enough time to get everything done in a day. So like we can't let that happen. And I let that happen for years, where it's like, all right, business is going well. Like, yeah, I'm a little overweight, I'm out of shape, like not eating very healthy, but that's okay. But like business is only one leg of that stool. You need those other legs of the stool, your physical and mental health, your spirituality, your relationships, your community, and all those different things to really like to build a thriving business and an amazing life. And as we also started talking about, as we hit record, I just started 75 Hard. So that's like a recommitment to just discipline and like taking things up a notch. And like, I knew I was fit. I ran a marathon last month, and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty fit, fitter than most people out there, but I knew I had more. I knew I could go deeper with that. Like you talked about earlier, going deeper. And it's like, let me recommit. Let me put these things in the calendar so they happen. And then I'll get the things done that need to get done. Like I'll get the important things done. It's just, maybe the other minutia doesn't get done, or maybe I just have to figure out a way to build a system or to hire someone or delegate it or just not do it. It forces your hand at, challenging the assumptions of what you need to do in your business on a daily basis, right?
I've been asked multiple times, like, hey, how do you do all these things and still, be with your family and be with your wife and, run a business and, be an entrepreneur and all the different roles. And so I think really it comes down to 5 different decisions that you can make when your plate's full. And it really depends on what the task is, really. And one of the pitfalls that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into is number one, I mean, we always have the choice to work longer. That's always a choice. And, sometimes you just got to do that, especially if the task or whatever you're working on has a deadline. If it has a deadline, then like you've got to get it done. And if that means that, you stay up till midnight or, pull an all-nighter, or you work 60 hours that week to get it done, or 70 hours or 80 hours or whatever it is, and sometimes you got to do that. And then, sometimes things are more flexible. Maybe it doesn't have a deadline. So you can move those things around, like my workouts and certain other things that I have are flexible within the day. There's times where I work out like at lunch. There's times where I work out late at night or early in the morning or whatever. So that's more flexible around the things that have deadlines, but I have to get it done in the day somewhere. And then, we all have things that are on our list that have been on the list for quite a while. And, what we find is sometimes we're doing things that just aren't important that we can delete. I mean, we all have things, on our plate where, where they're just time wasters, or really you think it's important, but it's not. It's not really contributing to hitting your goals, or it's just not making you effective. You can delete those things off your plate. And when you delete those things, let's say you were spending time on it. When you delete it, all of a sudden that frees up time for you to work on something that has a deadline.
So what were the first 3? Can you just recap real quick?
Yeah, you can, number 1, you work longer. Number 2, you can move it if it's flexible. And number 3, delete it, take it off the list. And then the next 2 really have a lot to do with your skill, and these are things that I've worked on. Delegation is, super important within leadership. You have to know what to delegate, how to delegate it. You just can't take something and pass it off to somebody and expect them to just get it done. I've delegated passively before in the past.
Oh yeah, me too.
Dude, passive delegation can get you in trouble, man.
We call it don't abdicate. Abdicate is where you're like, all right, Graham, just do this, and you're just like abdicating the throne. You're gone. And then you come back, you're like, oh, that's not at all what I expected or wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And so we make the assumption as leaders that, hey, they're smart, they got it. Well, we got to provide some sort of coaching or direction to them. So that's a big one. And, a lot of times you're like, well, what can I delegate? Well, if you can find somebody that can do the task you're doing at 80% of the skill level, then if you can delegate it off, get it off your plate, man. And what that does, that frees you up for more higher level stuff that nobody else but you can work on. And that's a big key. And the biggest thing with delegation is ego gets in the way. We want to control everything, and that's probably the biggest thing that I've had to work on in the last couple of years as the company's grown. And then the next one is leveraging your time. And that's really getting creative with your time and being intentional, being creative. And it's where you can do 2 things at one time. An example would be like, this is just a classic for me. I'll be in the middle of doing something and I'll talk on the phone while I'm doing something. You know what I mean? I'll get the conversation. And so there's sometimes where that's good and sometimes where that's bad. Sometimes you need to be actually very present and in those conversations, but sometimes not. So it depends on what it is. But whenever you can find leveraging, it's like a Christmas gift. You're like, oh, I just freed up another hour. I just freed up 2 hours.
Yeah. I'm a big fan leveraging by systems as well, or like a software or something that can automate, or if you're doing like training, if you're telling every one of your team members the same thing, it's like, all right, well, why don't I just record a video and give them that training. So it's kind of memorialized and they can just consume that. And I'm not the bottleneck for producing that. So that's a way to create leverage as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. We just hired a company out of Canada. It's called Know How, and Know How essentially, it's like, how would I explain it? It's if anybody wants to know how to do anything within the company, any sort of question, they can go into Know How, the database. They can plug in the question, and then all these videos pop up.
So it's like an SOP library.
Yep. SOP library. And we just found ourselves, we're hiring all these people and they have so many questions. We just create an SOP, create a video, create a know-how, and then plug it in and everybody has access and away we go.
That's a great idea. I'm going to check Know How out. Yeah. I mean, we do that on a manual basis where we have our training platform for our clients. And if we get the same, the same question from a few different clients, like, okay, well, let's go create a training video on that, because obviously there's a gap in our training somewhere and they're not finding that. So it makes their lives easier. It makes our lives easier because we're not answering the same questions over and over. And then I always talk about that with roofing company owners as well. You're getting the same questions from your prospects and clients, like, how does this work? And like, what are my financing options? Like, what are the warranties? We'll take all those FAQs that you're getting and do a video on each one. And you have your whole video library where you're answering these questions. And I mean, that serves multiple purposes, but it's a fantastic strategy for both marketing and making your, leveraging your team's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we found, was it Google Drive? Yeah, Google Drive just started to get really cluttered.
Yeah.
Hey, where do I find this? Where do I find that? And just having that system. So Know How is a little bit cleaner for us.
I will check that out. We were actually just talking about Google Drive this week and we use it heavily, and we're like, yeah, we need to come up with a better like naming convention and like, how do we find things and
how do you label it and store it? And, it's like organizing everything.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I love that. Those 5 points. Can you recap those real quick? Just what they are?
Yeah. So number one is work longer. We always have that choice. That's usually for things that have a deadline. So if you have a deadline, that's the choice typically you got to lean on. Number two would be move it. If you've got something that's a little bit more flexible, then you can move it around in your calendar, no problem. Number three would be it's not that important, so go ahead and delete it. You find out like it truly doesn't affect, the bottom line or the goals or whatever, what you're striving for, so you can delete that off the list. Number four was delegate, and number five was leverage your time.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we all have the same amount of time in every single day, and we've heard it all the time. We heard it over and over. It's not that you don't have the time, it's that you don't prioritize it, right? We all make time for the things that we prioritize. So important in business to have that mental side, to have that physical side dialed in, so you can be the best leader and serve your team and your community and your family. Huge believer in that. On the physical end, I can't wait till the end when Graham talks about what he's got going on the physical end of things, some insane workout that he's doing every day. But right now, I want to dive into lightning round, just a few quick questions to wrap things up. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Anything off the table here?
Nah, let's roll.
All right. Morning routine.
I wake up anywhere between 5:30 and 6. Depends on how my body feels. First thing I do is I drink probably a 20-ounce glass of water and take this, it's a supplement that helps kickstart my adrenals. Then I will read my Bible for about probably a half hour, and I'll write for probably 30, 40 minutes. This morning I wrote for about an hour, wrote about fatherhood.
If you weren't a roofing company owner right now in 2020, what would you be doing?
2020, I'd be working out and playing music all day long. I would work out the first half of the day and then I'd play music the second half.
How would you make money?
I'd figure out a way to make money working out and playing music.
Love it. You'll just figure out, just do it. Make it happen. Just get it done.
That's right.
All right. One thing you are super intentional about teaching your kids.
One thing I'm super intentional about teaching my kids. Following through. doing a job 100%. So it's either two ways to do things. It's either done right or you do it again.
Fantastic. One piece of advice to tell a new roofing company owner.
Figure out your foundation. What do you strongly believe in? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? Why? Why are you here? Why are you doing it? And then figure out how you're going to do it.
Boom. I love it. Last question. Next business.
I've got so many ideas. Kid entrepreneurship is something that I would like to work on.
Cool.
Something in the fitness and nutrition would be one. Anything that helps the environment, anything leadership related. So we're actually in process of putting together a leadership school.
Awesome. I'll be paying attention to that for sure.
We're doing it internal first. So one of the things that we're doing is we're doing like certifications. So there's a number of different skills out there that our guys would get certified on. Can't really talk about, but just know that.
All right. Keep an eye on that for sure. Thanks for sharing. That was fun. I like to kind of end with the lightning round, but we've got one more thing. I can't not mention it, can't not talk about it. I'm excited to talk about it. So this is kind of for me selfishly, and I think a lot of people will get a lot of value out of this as well. You're doing the Murph 365. Can you talk about what that is for those that don't know what the Murph is, what exactly you're doing, and why you're doing it?
Awesome, man. So glad you asked. So Murph 365, how do I explain this? Dude, so all right. So first I'll explain the workout. So in the CrossFit world, some of you guys are familiar with CrossFit. They have what you call hero WODs, and a hero WOD is a workout in memory of, first responder or, someone like in the military that, died serving. And so Lieutenant Michael Murphy was part of, you've seen that movie Lone Survivor, right?
Yep.
Okay, so in that movie, there's a point where one of the men, Lieutenant Michael Murphy, had to run to the top of a mountain while they were under attack to get a signal in and alert, their base that, hey, they're under attack and to come rescue or whatever. It was a suicide mission. So, or his move was like, there's no way you're going to come out of that situation alive. So he ended up dying, and because of that, Marcus Luttrell survived as the lone survivor. And so CrossFit created a workout called the Murph. And the Murph is a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and a 1 mile run wearing a 20-pound weighted vest or, body armor, whichever one. And so traditionally in CrossFit, across the CrossFit nation, Murph has done a Memorial Day to memorialize, and to raise awareness for, our fallen heroes and our fallen soldiers. And they did that, and they actually raised money for the Murph Foundation and then also some other charities. So I was thinking, and this actually wasn't my idea. My business partner came to me last fall. He went to an event. He has some ties to the NFL, and I think David Goggins went to go speak at an NFL event, and Steven was there. Steven met with David, sort of in an intimate, space. And Steven had this challenge going through his head, like, I want to do something that is different. And, I'm in my 40s, and, I think it's time to, raise the bar and do something challenging. So he came up with the idea of like, well, why don't I do a Murph every day? So he was talking to David Goggins about it. And David's point was, I don't follow people a lot, but if you do something like that, I will be sure to follow it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so Steven came back from that event and told me about it. And I didn't think he was serious. Like, I was like, I didn't think Steven was serious that he would want to do it. So I took it like something like that. I've done stuff like this before in the past, but something like that, I'll take my time to really think about it because I want to develop a purpose. When you go through things that are challenging, it's really important for you to have a purpose and a reason why, because when you hit those walls, your purpose will push you through those walls. It's got to be strong enough.
Absolutely. Same in business, bro.
Yeah, same in business. So, and that's why you start with your why. Why are you here? Because if you're not if you don't develop a purpose as to why you're doing your business, it's the first challenge that you come across, you're going to be questioning, and it's just going to be this big mental battle of, man, maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should just fold my business, and that's a lot of businesses fail, not because they fail financially, but they fail mentally, because there's a lot of financial issues that you can get through by just be mentally fit.
Yep.
He brought it up. I stewed on it. I started getting a bunch of people like just randomly asking me about a Murph. And I'm like, why are people asking me about a Murph? I haven't even talked about Murph to anybody, but literally I like 5 different times, 5 different places, 5 different people. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I should do this, and it scared the shit out of me. So essentially what Murph 365 is doing a Murph every day for an entire year. And while doing so, raising money. I made the commitment on January 1st that I was going to do it. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I went and I got the website. I put it on my vision board and made the commitment to do it. And then it was like 4 or 5 weeks went by. Steven didn't say anything about it. So I just thought he forgot about it. And I was kind of forgetting about it. I'm like, man, if I don't do something about this now, it's going to go away. So I ordered a vest. And the thing about commitment is when you invest financially, you're more inclined to do something.
For sure.
I don't know. I just bought the most expensive vest and I was like, screw it, we're going to do it. So I bought the vest. As soon as it came in the next day, I started. I was not really in shape. And that's the thing. People might say like, oh, I bet you were in shape when you started doing it. Nah, man, like that first Murph that I did, I was laying on the ground for 20 minutes when I finished.
Wow.
It took me probably 2 to 3 weeks of just like, it just sucked every single day for 2 to 3 weeks. And my body started hurting. I'd get like my shoulders would throb, my elbows would throb. My ankles were like, it was all like, everything was jacking up. And I was just like, dang, man, I don't know if I can, what is it? And you just start questioning. And then you're just like, screw it. And you just keep going.
Let me just jump in. I love that point because I think a lot of people might look at you and say, yeah, that's easy for him to do, or easier because he's a fit guy. Like, look at him. But like, that's just making excuses because I just learned right now that you weren't fit and that was a struggle.
I was coming off Ninja. Like I had a quote unquote stress fracture or something jacked up with my foot back in September. And that's what was holding me back. I was like, man, I don't know, man. Like I had this injury. And then I was like, you know what? That sounds like an excuse, And so I really checked the excuse. I really wasn't in the best of shape. I was okay. But now it's like, I've worked through all that pain, and literally my body was on fire and inflamed for 4 weeks. And then now it's just, it might be inflamed. I don't know. I can't really tell anymore.
Just numb.
I can't tell, and what's cool is like, so I'm 108 days in, today will be 109. And it's like, my body learns how to heal in like a matter of hours.
Wow. Because
there's no days off. There's 0 days off. If you look at some of the stats, like I could pull up my cell phone and I'll show you like, cause I wear a Garmin and so it keeps track of like the intensity. So at first it was like this huge spike and then it like went flat and then it just dropped. And what happened is my body got so used to it that it's almost like a warm up. So now it's like, I do that and I do other stuff.
I was going to ask you, so it's not as challenging, of course, as it was that first few weeks. So you still need a little bit more to get that workout high, if you will. Yeah.
So now your body adapts and it depends on where you want to go. I have goals down the road. I could start to press my body in different ways. I could start to add in some running routines and start to add in some other workouts as well. That kind of stuff would require just really tight nutrition and tight supplements and tight sleep and all that.
Man, I could not think of a more meaningful way to end. Speaking of meaningful, you're raising money for that. Where can people go to learn more about that if they want to be a part of that and follow your journey?
Well, I would say right now, go to Murph365 official on Instagram and you'll see the videos. We post videos there every day. So follow us on Instagram. I don't really post a lot on Facebook with that. it's just, I don't know, it's not really a good medium for it. And we'll have our link up. We'll have our website up. It's essentially, it'll be a landing page where you can go and you can donate to certain families. So what we're doing, and eventually what we'll get to, is honoring different people every day. So we'll honor someone that died on, let's say June 3rd. So we'll honor somebody that died on June 5th, and we'll honor someone that died on June 6th. And then we'll post little clips of our workouts and stuff like that. And essentially what we're doing is those charities, we're donating, we're raising money for charities that actually help Gold Star families. And a Gold Star family is, a husband or a wife of a man or a woman that died serving the country. And, they still have needs, they still have income needs, they have children, so a lot of them will actually have scholarship, will pay for scholarships, for their children. So to me, that's super important. Honor is one of those things that's super important to me. I love the country we live in, and, what better way to honor, people that did it. And selfishly, the selfish side of it is, if I can do something every single day for an entire year, what does that unlock for me? Personally, it requires a certain amount of discipline. And that's the reason why I'm doing it. Outside of that, we're raising $100,000. And one of the ways that we would do that is, if you want to click and donate, that's great. But what you can do is you can actually pledge. And this is where it gets interesting. It's kind of like playing poker or playing blackjack, where, you pay $5 to play.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. And then you can pledge like, hey man, if I complete it, which I am. So if, maybe you pledge $100, you pledge $500 or $1,000. And what that does for me is, it's like, I know I've got $100,000 riding on this when I complete it. So that's accountability in my mind to get it done.
So if you don't, then you're letting all those people down, and you're not getting those pledges, and those people aren't getting those donations. Yeah, I love it, man. That is so cool. I'm following you guys on Instagram. I love it. It's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, for doing that, for inspiring us. I'll be thinking of you as I'm doing my workout later for sure. And thanks again for being here, man. Sharing your journey. Really cool. Really, outside the box of the normal roofing company owner. I love everything that you're doing. Any parting shots you have for the audience? Let us know what you got, where they can find you, to kind of follow your journey.
Yeah, you got it. I would say, personally, there's a lot going on in the world right now, a lot going on in our country. Just, I would say, do something nice for people. Do something kind, be nice, be loving, have fun. That would be my parting message. And then outside of that, if you want to follow me, you can find me very easily. My name's very unique. So it's Graham Desert, spelled like dessert. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can follow our company at Roofing 101 Official on Instagram.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. It's been a blast. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. And I look forward to connecting again soon.